Jack Miller wiped his sweaty palms on his uniform pants for the 5th time in as many minutes. Today was the day that would make or break humanity's future among the stars. "Stop fidgeting," Admiral Peterson whispered, eyes fixed on the airlock door. "They'll smell fear on you." "Is that literal or figurative, sir?" Jack asked, adjusting his translator device. "Both." The diplomatic hall of Outpost Horizon buzzed with nervous energy. 12 humans stood in perfect formation, Earth's finest diplomats, military leaders, and one linguistic specialist, Jack. At 32, he was the youngest person in the room, but the only one who had mastered enough of the complex Vakari language to attempt communication. "Remember," Dr. Lisa Reed, the station's chief xenobiologist, leaned over to whisper, "the Vakari respect strength above all else. No smiling, no friendly gestures. Keep your stance wide and your chin up." Jack nodded. The Vakari Empire controlled 17 star systems and had never, not once in their recorded history, formed an alliance with any species they deemed weak. Humans needed this alliance. Earth was running out of resources, and the Vakari controlled access to mineral-rich planets that could sustain humanity for centuries. A harsh buzzing sound filled the room. The airlock door slid open with a hiss of pressure. The first thing Jack noticed was their size. The Vakari delegation ducked to enter the 8-foot doorway. Their scaled skin gleamed under the lights, a mix of gray-green tones that shifted like oil on water as they moved. Sharp yellow eyes scanned the room, missing nothing. Leading them was Commander Rika. Jack had studied her file extensively: 26 successful military campaigns, 14 personal combat victories against rival commanders, and rumored to be next in line for the position of War Director, the highest military rank in their empire. She stood a full 7 feet tall, her broad shoulders wrapped in armor that appeared to be made from some kind of metallic scales layered over each other. A network of scars crisscrossed her face and arms, each one a story of battle and survival. Unlike the other Vakari, whose scales were mostly green, hers had hints of blue, a sign of high rank according to the briefing files. "Welcome to Outpost Horizon," Admiral Peterson said, giving the traditional human greeting of an open-palmed gesture. The translator device at his throat converted his words into the harsh, clicking language of the Vakari. Commander Rika stepped forward, her yellow eyes locked onto the Admiral first, then swept across the human delegation until they landed on Jack. He felt a chill run down his spine. The briefing materials hadn't mentioned how intense their gaze would be, like being studied by a predator. "We accept your welcome," she replied through her own translation device. Her voice was deeper than Jack expected, with a rumbling quality that vibrated in his chest. "I am Commander Rika of the 3rd Battle Fleet, voice of the High Council, destroyer of the Krell Armada." Now came Jack's part. As the linguistic specialist, he was to deliver the formal response in the Vakari's own language, a sign of respect that had taken months to prepare. He stepped forward, standing tall despite being nearly 2 feet shorter than the commander. "Great warriors of the Vakari Empire," Jack began, the harsh sounds of their language feeling strange in his mouth. "We honor your strength and wisdom. Earth extends its hand in alliance to the—" His translator device made a small popping sound. Jack felt a tiny electric shock against his throat. Something was wrong. The device was malfunctioning, but he had to continue. He had practiced this speech for weeks. He could finish it without the aid. "Mighty Vakari, whose name brings—" Jack faltered for a fraction of a second, searching for the word for respect in his memory. He found what he thought was the right term and continued confidently. "To all who hear it." The reaction was immediate and shocking. Every Vakari in the room went completely still. One of them made a choking sound. Commander Rika's eyes widened, her pupils expanding so much that the yellow was almost swallowed by black. And then, impossibly, her scales began to change color. The gray-green-blue mixture flushed away as a bright crimson red spread from her neck to her face, down her arms, and across every visible part of her body. Jack knew something had gone terribly wrong. Vakari didn't change colors like this. Nothing in the briefing materials mentioned this ability. Had he accidentally issued a challenge? Declared war? Called her mother a space slug? The red-scaled commander opened her mouth, then closed it. She seemed to be struggling for words. Another shocking development for a species known for their direct, often brutal honesty. "This meeting is concluded," she finally said, her voice oddly tight. "We will continue discussions tomorrow." Without another word, she turned and walked stiffly back toward the airlock. Her warriors followed, casting confused glances between their leader and the humans. The door sealed shut behind them with a hiss that sounded unnervingly final. The silence in the room lasted for exactly 3 seconds before it exploded into chaos. "What the hell happened?" Admiral Peterson demanded, rounding on Jack. "I don't know." Jack examined his translator, which was now emitting small wisps of smoke. "The device failed, but I continued with the prepared speech." "Clearly not the prepared speech," Dr. Reed said, her face pale. "I've never seen a Vicari react like that, never. Did I accidentally declare war? Challenge her to combat?" Jack's stomach twisted with dread. "No," said Dr. Reed slowly, her scientific curiosity overtaking her initial shock. "If you had, we'd all be dead already. The Vicari don't hesitate when challenged." She turned to her assistant. "Pull up every file we have on Vicari color changes. I want to know what that red means." Jack replayed the moment in his mind, trying to figure out where he'd gone wrong. The word he'd used, what was it? He'd meant to say, "brings respect." But the word he'd chosen. "Oh no," he whispered, as realization dawned. "What?" Admiral Peterson demanded. I think I called Commander Rika, decorated war hero and potential future war director of the Vicari Empire. Cute. The room fell silent again. "You did what?" Admiral Peterson's face turned almost as red as the commander's had. The words are similar in their language. Varak means respect. Varik means... Jack swallowed hard. It's their word for something small, harmless, and adorable. Basically the opposite of everything their culture values. "We're dead," someone muttered from the back of the room. Dr. Reed shook her head, still deep in thought. "No, that doesn't explain the color change, or why she didn't immediately challenge you for the insult." She looked up suddenly. "Something else is happening here. Something we don't understand yet." Admiral Peterson sighed deeply. "Good work, people. Day 1 of our make-or-break first contact, and we've already called their military commander a fluffy bunny." He pointed at Jack. "Fix this, whatever it takes." Jack nodded numbly, wondering how exactly one apologized to a 7-foot alien warrior for accidentally calling them cute, and why, instead of killing him on the spot, she had turned bright red and fled the room. Tomorrow's meeting was going to be interesting. "You're not fired," Admiral Peterson said. Jack, who had been standing at attention in the Admiral's office for the past 10 minutes expecting the worst, blinked in surprise. "I'm not? No." The Admiral looked just as confused as Jack felt. "In fact, you've been specifically requested to continue as the human liaison to the Vicari delegation." Jack's mouth fell open. "By who?" "By Commander Rika herself." This made no sense. Jack had spent a sleepless night preparing for his dismissal, or worse. He had insulted one of the most decorated warriors in the Vicari Empire. Their species was known for killing people who showed them disrespect. Yet here he was, not only alive but being asked to continue his role. "Sir, with all due respect, what's going on?" Admiral Peterson sighed and gestured to the screens on his wall. They showed various readings and images from the meeting yesterday. One screen was paused on Commander Rika's face just as the red color had spread across her scales. "Dr. Reed has been analyzing the data all night. The Vicari delegation didn't leave the station as we feared. Instead, they've been in their quarters, sending messages back to their homeworld. Messages that our intelligence team can't decode." He rubbed his forehead. "And then, an hour ago, we received the formal request for you to remain as liaison." The door slid open and Dr. Reed walked in. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes red-rimmed but excited. You need to see this, she said, not bothering with formalities. She tapped on her tablet and a new image appeared on the main screen, a graph with multiple colored lines. These are biological readings from the Vicari delegation during yesterday's our meeting, she explained. Heart rate, body temperature, hormone levels, everything our sensors could pick up. She pointed to one line that spiked dramatically. This is Commander Rika's reading at the exact moment you misspoke. Jack winced. And it's not an anger response. Dr. Reed's eyes gleamed with scientific curiosity. At least not according to everything we know about Vicari biology. When Vicari are angry, their hormone patterns look like this. She pulled up another graph for comparison. See? Completely different. Then what is it? Admiral Peterson asked. Dr. Reed hesitated. I have a theory, but it's so unprecedented that I'm reluctant to say until I'm certain. We don't have time for scientific caution, Doctor, the Admiral said. We need answers before the next meeting. Dr. Reed sighed. Fine. Based on these readings and comparing them to similar patterns in other species, I believe Commander Rika experienced something similar to what humans would call embarrassment. Or more specifically, she looked uncomfortable. Attraction. Jack stared at her. That's impossible. Is it? She raised an eyebrow. What do we actually know about Vicari mating behaviors? Almost nothing. They're intensely private about it. All we know is that they consider emotional displays to be weakness, which is why they hide them at all costs. So you're saying, when I called her cute, she, got flustered? Jack couldn't wrap his head around the idea. Commander Rika was a 7-foot-tall warrior who could probably break him in half without trying. It's just a theory, Dr. Reed said defensively, but it would explain why she's requesting you specifically as the liaison instead of having you executed for the insult. Before Jack could respond, his comm device beeped. Mr. Miller, said a voice, the Vicari delegation is requesting your presence in meeting room 3, immediately. Jack looked at the Admiral, who nodded. Don't make them wait. And Jack, he added as Jack headed for the door, try not to call anyone cute this time. Meeting room 3 was smaller than the formal greeting hall, with a round table and chairs designed to accommodate both human and Vicari physiology. When Jack entered, he found only one Vicari present, Commander Rika. She stood by the viewport, looking out at the stars. Her scales had returned to their normal gray-green-blue coloration. She turned as the door closed behind Jack. Linguistics specialist Miller, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Your presence is acknowledged. Jack gave the formal Vicari greeting, a closed fist held at chest level. Commander Rika, thank you for requesting this meeting. He noticed his replacement translator device was working perfectly this time. No malfunctions, no electric shocks. You will explain the meaning behind your words yesterday, she said. It wasn't a question. Jack took a deep breath. There was a malfunction in my translation device. The word I used was not the one I intended. It was a mistake, and I apologize for any offense. Rika's yellow eyes studied him intently. What word did you intend to use? Varek, Jack said, meaning respected or honored. And instead you used Varek, she said. Her scales seemed to shimmer, slightly at the word. Yes. I understand in your culture that word is highly insulting when applied to a warrior. It implies weakness and insignificance. Rika took several steps toward him, her movements deliberate. She was close enough now that Jack had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. You understand very little of our culture, human Jack, she said, her voice lower than before. That word has multiple meanings depending on context. Oh? Jack tried to keep his voice steady. Dr. Reed's theory suddenly seemed less far-fetched. In ancient times, before the Great Unification, it was used as a battle term, she explained. It described the moment when a warrior saw through their opponent's armor, found the vulnerable spot. Her eyes never left his. In modern usage, it has become problematic. Jack swallowed. I see. Well, I'm grateful for your understanding of my error. Rika made a sound that might have been a laugh, a short, harsh exhalation. I have not said I understand it, or that I accept your apology. Before Jack could respond, she turned and walked to a small container on the table that he hadn't noticed before. She opened it and removed something wrapped in a cloth. When she unwrapped it, Jack saw it was a knife, about 12 inches long, with an intricately carved handle. This is for you, she said, holding it out to him, handle first. Jack froze. Was this a challenge? A ritual execution? But why give him a weapon? It is customary, she prompted when he didn't move. Carefully, Jack reached out and took the knife. It was heavier than it looked, and the handle seemed to warm to his touch. Immediately. Thank you, he said, having no idea what else to say. Do you know what this means? Rika asked, her head tilted slightly to one side. I'm afraid I don't, Jack admitted. Rika's scales shimmered again, and for a brief moment, Jack thought he saw a hint of red appear at the edges of her neck. Good, she said abruptly. Knowledge should be earned, not given. You will learn. She stepped back. Tomorrow, you will accompany me on a tour of your station. I wish to understand how humans live and work in space. Of course, Jack said, still holding the knife awkwardly. I would be happy to show you. Happy, she repeated, as if testing the word. Another emotional state your kind displays so freely. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Bring the knife, she said without looking back. Always. And then she was gone, leaving Jack standing alone in the meeting room holding a Vakari knife and feeling more confused than ever. She gave you a what? Dr. Reed asked, carefully examining the knife Jack had placed on her lab table. A knife, and said I should always carry it with me, Jack explained. What does it mean? Dr. Reed ran a scanner over the weapon. Well, according to our database, this is definitely not a standard Vakari weapon. The design is ceremonial. She looked up at Jack with wide eyes. This is either a death threat or a deeply personal gift. Those are very different things, Jack exclaimed. Welcome to the confusion of first contact, Dr. Reed said with a small smile. But given that she's requested a private tour of the station with you tomorrow, I'm leaning toward the latter explanation. Jack ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. You're saying a decorated alien commander is, what? Interested in me because I accidentally called her cute? I'm saying we don't understand Vakari culture as well as we thought. Dr. Reed's expression turned serious. Be careful tomorrow, Jack. We're walking on eggshells here. One wrong move could still end the alliance before it begins. Jack nodded, looking down at the knife. No, pressure, right? Ting. Assuming they all lived. Jack arrived 15 minutes early for the station tour, the Vakari knife securely attached to his belt. He had spent half the night practicing how to walk without stabbing himself with it. The weapon felt strange, against his hip, heavy and warm, almost like it was alive. You look terrible, Dr. Reed said, walking up beside him in the corridor outside the meeting point. Didn't sleep much, Jack admitted. Too busy worrying about accidentally starting an interstellar war. Well, you look presentable at least. She straightened his collar. I've been doing more research on Vakari customs. There's not much in the database about personal gifts, but what I did find is interesting. Jack raised an eyebrow. Define interesting. The ceremonial blade you received, it's called a kirzal. It's usually only given to family members or, she hesitated, or potential mates. Her words came out in a rush. Jack stared at her. That's not possible. Actually, it makes a strange kind of sense. Dr. Reed's eyes lit up with scientific enthusiasm. The word you used, varik, in ancient Vakari dialect, it meant one who sees beneath the armor. It was a warrior term, yes, but it evolved into something more personal over the centuries. You're saying I accidentally used some kind of Vakari pickup line? Jack felt his face grow hot. More like you accidentally told a fearsome warrior that you saw her vulnerable side, Reed explained. For a species that values strength above all else, Acknowledging vulnerability is incredibly intimate. Before Jack could respond, the door at the end of the corridor opened. Commander Rika stepped through, and Jack immediately noticed something different about her. Her battle armor, while still imposing, now featured decorative markings along the edges, swirling patterns etched in what looked like silver. Two other Vakari warriors flanked her, their expressions unreadable as they scanned. "Jack and Dr. Reed, linguistics specialist Miller," Rika said formally. "You are punctual. This is good." "Commander Rika," Jack replied with a small bow. "I'm ready to show you the station whenever you wish to begin." Rika's eyes dropped to the knife at his belt, and her scales shimmered slightly. "You wear the blade," she said, sounding pleased. "These two will not accompany us," she added, gesturing to her guards. "They will remain here." The guards didn't look happy about this, but they stepped back without argument. Dr. Reed gave Jack a meaningful look before excusing herself. Jack was on his own now. "Where would you like to start the tour?" he asked. "Show me where humans gather, when not working," Rika said. "I wish to understand how your kind relaxes." Jack nodded and led her toward the station's recreation deck. As they walked, he noticed that Rika kept a precise distance from him, close enough for conversation, but not so close that they might accidentally touch. Was that standard Vakari protocol or something specific to their situation? "You are nervous," Rika said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Your heart rate is elevated." Jack glanced at her, surprised. "You can hear my heartbeat?" "Vakari hearing is more sensitive than human hearing," she explained. "It is useful in battle to know when an opponent is afraid." Her yellow eyes fixed on him. "Are you afraid of me, human Jack?" "Not afraid," Jack said carefully. "More uncertain. I'm still learning about your culture, and I don't want to make another mistake." They reached the recreation deck. Through the large viewport, they could see a group of off-duty crew members playing a zero-gravity ball game in the central area. Others sat at small tables, talking or playing board games. Music played softly in the background. Rika watched the activities with intense interest. "Your people play together even as adults," she observed. "This is unusual." "Don't Vakari have games or sports?" Jack asked. "We have combat training and competition," she replied. "But not for fun." She said the word as if testing how it felt in her mouth. As they continued the tour, Jack showed her the hydroponics garden, the observation deck, and finally, the small library where crew members could read or study in peace. Rika seemed particularly fascinated by the concept of fiction books. "You create false stories for enjoyment?" she asked, holding a paper novel carefully in her large hands. "We call it imagination," Jack explained. "It helps us see the world through different eyes." Rika considered this. "Like seeing beneath armor," she said quietly. Before Jack could respond, his comm device beeped. "Mr. Miller," came Admiral Peterson's voice, "please bring Commander Rika to Conference Room 1 immediately. We have an unexpected situation." The unexpected situation turned out to be the arrival of another Vakari ship. On the main screen, in Conference Room 1, a new Vakari commander glared at them. His scales were darker than Rika's, with red markings that Jack now knew indicated military achievements. "Commander Drex," Rika said, her posture stiffening. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" The male Vakari's voice was harsh even through the translator. "News of your behavior has reached the High Council, Rika. I have been sent to evaluate your fitness for continued command." Jack saw Rika's scales ripple, though her face remained expressionless. "My fitness is not in question," she said evenly. "The Alliance negotiations with the humans proceed as planned, do they?" Drex's eyes shifted to Jack, and he felt a chill run down his spine. "I hear you've been spending time alone with this small one, that you gave him a kirzal." His mouth twisted in what must have been the Vakari equivalent of a sneer. "Perhaps the rumors are true. Perhaps you have grown weak." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Every human present froze, recognizing the dangerous turn the conversation had taken. Rika's guards, who had been standing by the wall, moved their hands to their weapons. "Choose your next words with care, Drex," Rika said, her voice dangerously low, "unless you wish to make a formal challenge." Jack didn't know much about Vakari politics, but even he understood what was happening. This Commander Drex was questioning Rika's authority, maybe even trying to take her position. Drex's yellow eyes narrowed. "I make no challenge, yet. But I will be watching Rika. The High Council has authorized me to remain at this station to observe the negotiations." His gaze shifted to Jack again. "And to observe you." The screen went black. Admiral Peterson cleared his throat. "Commander Rika, would you care to explain what just happened?" Rika's scales had settled back to their normal color, but Jack noticed her hands were clenched at her sides. "Internal Vakari politics," she said dismissively. "It will not affect our negotiations." But as the meeting broke up and people began to leave, Jack saw Dr. Reed motion him over to her console. On it was a translation of Vakari communications they had intercepted. "This doesn't look good," she whispered, pointing to a particular section. "According to this, there's a faction in the Vakari government that believes Commander Rika has been compromised. They're using her reaction to you as evidence that she's unfit to lead." "Because of what I said?" Jack felt sick. "Because I called her cute?" "Because she reacted the way she did," Reed corrected. "In their culture, showing any kind of emotional vulnerability is considered weakness. The fact that she turned red, instead of killing you on the spot, is being used against her." Jack looked across the room to where Rika stood, talking with Admiral Peterson. Had he ruined her career with one mistranslated word? "What happens if this Drex takes over the negotiations?" he asked Dr. Reed's expression was grim. Based on his reputation, he'd likely reject the alliance entirely. The Vakari under his command have never allied with any species they consider inferior. She put a hand on Jack's arm. "And he clearly considers us inferior." "What can I do?" Jack asked. "For now, be careful," Reed advised. "Rika requested you specifically as liaison for a reason. Whatever is happening between you two is now at the center of Vakari politics, whether you like it or not." Jack nodded, his hand unconsciously moving to the knife at his belt. He caught Rika watching him from across the room, her yellow eyes unreadable. Whatever was happening, whatever this knife meant, he was now involved in something much bigger than a simple translation error. And somehow, he needed to find a way to fix it before Commander Drex destroyed not only Rika's career, but humanity's chances for survival among the stars. That long. 3 days had passed since Commander Drex's arrival at the station. 3 days of tense meetings where Drex questioned every aspect of the potential alliance. 3 days of watching Rika grow more rigid and formal as her authority was constantly challenged. Jack sat in the empty observation deck, staring out at the stars. It was the middle of the night by station time, and most crew members were asleep. He couldn't sleep, though, not with the weight of what was happening. "You are troubled," said a familiar voice behind him. Jack turned to see Rika standing in the doorway. She wore lighter armor than usual, what he assumed was the Vakari equivalent of casual wear. Without asking permission, she sat in the chair, beside him. "I'm worried about the negotiations," Jack admitted. "Commander Drex seems determined to find reasons to reject the alliance." "It is not the alliance he wishes to reject," Rika said quietly. "It is me." Jack looked at her. In the dim light of the observation deck, her scales seemed to shimmer with subtle blue highlights. "Because of what happened when we first met?" he asked. "Because you turned red instead of, well, instead of killing you for the insult?" A sound escaped her that might have been a laugh. "Yes, that is part of it." "I'm sorry," Jack said. "This is all my fault. If my translator hadn't malfunctioned, then we would not be having this conversation," Rika finished, "and I would never have known what it is like to be seen." The way she said seen made Jack think of what Dr. Reed had told him, that Varric once meant one who sees beneath the armor. What does that mean to you? He asked. To be seen? Rika was quiet for a long moment. Vicari are taught from hatching that to show vulnerability is to invite death, she finally said. We hide our true selves behind armor, behind strength, behind cruelty if necessary. Her yellow eyes met his. I have killed 17 challengers in ritual combat. I have led fleets that destroyed entire worlds. I have never once shown fear or doubt or anything other than strength. Until I called you cute, Jack said softly. Until you saw something in me that no one else has seen, she corrected. Or, at least no one who lived to speak of it. She reached out slowly and placed something on the table between them. It was a small object made of a metal Jack didn't recognize, shaped like a teardrop. This is a memory crystal, she explained. It contains the battle records of my ancestors going back 20 generations. It is tradition to review these records before a challenge. Jack frowned. A challenge? From Drex? Rika nodded. He made it official this morning. He has challenged my fitness to lead, claiming I have been compromised by my interaction with humans. She didn't say, with you, but Jack heard it anyway. What does this challenge involve? Jack asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Combat, she said simply. To the death. Jack's stomach dropped. Can't you refuse? I could, but then I would lose my position, and Drex would take command of the negotiations. Her eyes hardened. And he would ensure they fail. Your people need this alliance, Jack. My challenge is in 2 days. Jack's mind raced. There must be something we can do. Rika picked up the memory crystal. In ancient times, a challenged one could name a champion to fight in their place, she said thoughtfully. Hope flared in Jack's chest. You could choose another warrior to fight for you? I could, but I will not. She tucked the crystal away. It would only confirm their belief that I am weak. Then why tell me about it? Jack asked. Rika was silent for a moment. Because I wanted you to understand why I must do this, she finally said. And because... She hesitated, which was so unlike her that Jack leaned forward. Because if I fall, I want someone to remember me as more than just a warrior. The implication of her words hit Jack hard. She was preparing for the possibility of her death. You won't fall, he said firmly. You'll win. Rika's scales rippled. Drex is younger, stronger. He has won 23 challenges. But you've won battles that mattered, Jack insisted. You lead fleets, you make decisions that affect worlds. In combat, those things mean nothing, she said. Jack thought quickly. What are the rules of this challenge? Are there weapons? Armor? Traditional armor only. 1 blade each. She touched her side where a larger version of the knife she'd given Jack would hang. It is meant to be a test of pure skill. Jack stood up suddenly. Show me. Rika blinked. Show you what? The combat, the moves, the weaknesses. Jack knew he was being bold, possibly even offensive, but he couldn't just sit back and watch her march to her death. If you won't name a champion, at least let me help you prepare. Rika stood as well, towering over him. You believe you can help me fight? I believe I can help you think, Jack countered. Humans might be physically weaker than Vicari, but we're resourceful. We find ways to win even when outmatched. For a long moment, Rika studied him. Then to his surprise, she nodded. Very well, come with me. The training room was empty at this late hour. Rika had dismissed her guards, insisting on privacy. Now she stood in the center of the room, her stance wide and balanced, holding a practice blade. Drex will attack aggressively, she explained, demonstrating a series of swift, powerful strikes against an imaginary opponent. He believes in overwhelming force. Jack watched carefully. And how will you counter? With traditional forms, she said, shifting to a defensive stance. Parry, counter, wait for an opening. That's what he'll expect, Jack pointed out. If he's younger and stronger, a traditional fight favors him. Rika frowned. What would you suggest? Dishonor? Not dishonor. Surprise. Jack picked up a practice blade, though it was almost too heavy for him to hold properly. In human combat training, we learn that when facing a stronger opponent, you must change the rules of engagement. Explain, Rika said, her interest clearly piqued. Drex expects you to fight like a traditional Vakari warrior, Jack said. So don't. Use moves he won't anticipate. Create openings instead of waiting for them. For the next 2 hours, they practiced. Jack couldn't match Rika's strength or speed, but he could show her human fighting techniques that might surprise Drex. To his amazement, she was a quick study, adapting human moves to her Vakari fighting style. By the time they finished, both were breathing hard, and Jack's muscles ached from exertion. But Rika's eyes were bright with something he hadn't seen before. Hope. You fight strangely, human Jack, she said, putting away the practice blades. But there is wisdom in your methods. Jack smiled tiredly. Just promise me you'll use every advantage you can. This isn't just about honor anymore, it's about survival. Yours and possibly my entire species. Rika nodded solemnly. I understand. She paused, then asked, would you do something for me? Before the challenge? Anything, Jack said without hesitation. In Vakari tradition, a warrior preparing for a life challenge spends time with those who matter to them. Her scales shimmered slightly. I would like you to tell me about Earth, about your home, about the things humans fight for. Jack understood what she was asking. She wanted a reason to fight beyond just honor and position. She wanted to understand what was at stake. I'll tell you everything, he promised, and then you'll go out there and show Drex what it really means to be strong. As they left the training room, Jack noticed something he hadn't seen before. A faint red tinge at the edges of Rika's scales, not from embarrassment this time, but something else entirely. Something that, despite the danger ahead, gave him hope that they might find a way through this together. The day of the challenge arrived with a tense stillness throughout the station. Word had spread among both humans and Vakari about what was happening. Everyone understood the stakes. This was no longer just about two commanders and their personal rivalry. The future of the alliance hung in the balance. Jack stood at the edge of the combat area, which had been set up in the station's largest cargo bay. The space had been cleared, and a large circle marked on the floor designated the fighting ground. Around it, Vakari warriors stood in formation, their faces impassive. On the human side, Admiral Peterson, Dr. Reed, and several other high-ranking officers watched nervously. She looks calm, Dr. Reed whispered, nodding toward Rika, who stood across the bay speaking quietly with one of her guards. She's not calm, Jack replied. She's just good at hiding it. The last 2 days had changed everything between them. Jack had spent hours telling Rika about Earth, about its oceans and mountains, about human traditions and families, about the hopes they had for the future. In return, she had shared glimpses of her own life, of growing up in a culture where showing any weakness meant death, where every day was a fight to prove yourself worthy. What does the knife mean? Jack had finally asked her the night before, pointing to the kirzal at his belt that he now carried everywhere. Rika's scales had shimmered with that now familiar hint of red. It means I see you too, she had said simply, and somehow that had been enough. Now, as Commander Drex entered the cargo bay surrounded by his own warriors, Jack felt fear grip his heart. Drex was indeed younger and stronger looking than Rika, his movements confident and predatory. Remember what we practiced, Jack said under his breath, knowing Rika couldn't hear him from across the room. Change the rules. A Vakari elder stepped into the center of the circle and raised his hands. This challenge has been properly issued and accepted, he announced, his voice echoing in the large space. Commander Drex challenges the fitness of Commander Rika to lead. By our ancient laws, this matter will be settled through combat. Looked between the two opponents. To first blood or to death? To death, Drex said immediately, his voice hard. Jack's stomach dropped. He had hoped Drex might choose the less final option. Rika simply nodded her agreement. The elder stepped back. Challengers, enter the circle. Both Vakari stepped forward, each carrying a blade similar to the one Rika had given Jack, only larger. They circled each other slowly, looking for openings. "I've waited a long time for this, Rika," Drek said, his voice loud enough for the observers to hear. "Everyone will finally see your weakness." Rika didn't respond. Her focus never wavered. Without warning, Drex attacked, lunging forward with incredible speed. His blade sliced through the air where Rika had been standing a split second before. She moved just in time, ducking under his arm in a move Jack recognized from their training sessions. Instead of backing away as traditional Vakari combat would dictate, she stayed close inside his guard and struck at his side. Drex barely blocked the blow, surprise evident in his eyes. "Fighting like a cornered prey animal?" he taunted, recovering quickly. "How fitting." Again he attacked, a flurry of powerful strikes that drove Rika back toward the edge of the circle. Jack held his breath. She was giving ground too quickly. But then he saw it. She wasn't retreating in fear, she was drawing Drex in, making him overconfident. Just as they had practiced. When Drex committed to a powerful downward strike, Rika didn't try to block it with strength. Instead, she redirected it, stepping to the side and allowing his momentum to carry him forward. Off balance, he stumbled, and Rika's blade flashed. Blood appeared on Drex's arm, a shallow cut, but first blood nonetheless. A murmur ran through the watching Vakari. This was not how traditional combat was supposed to go. Enraged, Drex attacked again, this time with more caution. The two warriors moved in a deadly dance, blades clashing, neither giving ground. Jack could see that Rika was tiring. Despite her, skilled Drex's youth and strength were taking their toll. A vicious strike from Drex caught Rika's shoulder, drawing blood. She staggered back, and Jack felt his heart skip a beat. Was this the end? Drex moved in for what he clearly thought would be the finishing blow. "Your weakness is exposed," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You let a human soften you. You turned red instead of showing strength. The council was right to question your fitness." Rika's eyes flicked to Jack for just a moment. Their gazes met across the room, and something passed between them. A shared understanding. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Rika's scales began to change color. The gray-green-blue shifted, and a brilliant crimson-red spread across her face, down her neck, and over her entire body. It wasn't the involuntary flush of their first meeting. This was deliberate, controlled. Drex faltered, confused by this unexpected display. "You call this weakness," Rika said, her voice clear and strong despite her injury. "I call it evolution." With Drex still off balance, she struck, not with the traditional Vakari move he was expecting, but with the unconventional technique Jack had shown her. Her blade moved in a pattern no Vakari would train for, catching Drex completely by surprise. The blade found its mark. Drex looked down in shock at the wound in his chest. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His knees buckled, and he fell. Silence filled the cargo bay. Rika stood over her fallen opponent, still glowing bright red, her chest heaving with exertion. The elder stepped forward again. "The challenge is complete," he declared. "Commander Rika has proven her fitness to lead." The Vakari warriors, even those who had come with Drex, bowed their heads in acknowledgement of the victory. It was done. "You turned red on purpose," Jack said later as Dr. Reed treated Rika's shoulder wound in the medical bay. "Yes," Rika admitted. "For the first time in my life, I chose to show what they call weakness. But it wasn't weakness that won the fight," Dr. Reed pointed out. "It was adaptability. You used techniques no Vakari would expect." "I learned from humans," Rika said simply. Her eyes found Jack's. "I learned that there is strength in being seen, in seeing others." Admiral Peterson entered the medical bay, his face showing relief. "Commander, I'm pleased to report that the Vakari High Council has just confirmed your continued leadership of the negotiation team. And," he smiled slightly, "they've expressed their interest in formalizing the alliance as soon as possible." "It seems your victory made quite an impression," Jack said. It wasn't just the victory, Rika replied. It was how I won. My people have always valued strength, but perhaps we've been too narrow in our definition of it. She looked around at the humans in the room. There is strength in adaptation, in change, in... She hesitated, then said the word, connection. 1 week later, Jack stood beside Rika as she signed the formal alliance documents. Her scales had returned to their normal color, but something fundamental had changed. The other Vakari warriors now looked at her with a new kind of respect. Not just fear of her strength, but acknowledgement of her wisdom. As the ceremony concluded, Rika turned to Jack. There is an ancient Vakari saying, she said. The strongest blade is forged in the hottest fire. I believe our peoples will forge something unprecedented together. Jack smiled. All because of a translation error. No, Rika corrected him, a hint of red appearing at the edges of her scales. All because you saw beneath the armor. And as their eyes met, Jack knew that this was just the beginning of a new understanding between their species and between the two of them. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, stronger for having seen each other's true selves. Sometimes the greatest diplomatic breakthroughs happened not through careful planning, but through honest mistakes. And sometimes, calling a fearsome alien warrior cute was the best mistake one could make.